I hit 62 that day, craving nothing more than a low-key dinner with my son, his wife, and a handful of dear friends, just tasty food, cozy vibes, and maybe a quick cheers to another year of keeping it together. But instead, I wound up sitting in stunned silence, staring across a flickering candlelit table as my only kid boldly claimed something he had no right to. The night kicked off harmlessly enough. Lauren picked this hip restaurant, all exposed brick walls, dangling Edison bulbs, and waiters tossing around, "Mate," like we were old pals. I'd barely gotten comfy in my seat when she slid a gift bag my way, tissue paper puffed up like it was ready for its close-up. Tucked inside was a tiny baby onesie, proudly declaring me the world's greatest nana. Lauren's eyes sparkled with that polished glow of hers as she said, "We figured it's time to start setting up the nursery, don't you think, Michael?" He gave a nod, his grin a little too slick, too rehearsed. "Yup, especially since we'll have extra space soon." I blinked, thrown. Extra space? Lauren leaned in closer across the table. "We're just so thankful you're on board, Susan," she said. "Not every mom would be this generous." The table went quiet. My brow furrowed, totally lost about what I'd supposedly signed up for. Before I could get a word out, Michael stood, clinking his wine glass with a spoon, his voice loud enough to make the servers freeze. "Here's to my incredible mom's birthday," he said, "but also to a huge leap for our family." Lauren whipped out her phone, hitting record. "We're moving into Mom's apartment," Michael declared, his smile practically glowing. "It's just practical. She doesn't need all that room anymore, and we're growing our family. It's such a blessing, truly generous of her. Let's toast to the woman who's making it happen." Glasses clinked around me. I went still, my fork hovering uselessly in my hand. His grin was too big as he looked my way. "Isn't that right, Mom?" The room's weight clamped down like a trap springing shut. Lauren's camera zeroed in on me. Every eye was waiting. I gave a nod, not because I agreed, but because panic took over. My mind blanked, like I'd been pushed onto a stage without a script. I plastered on a smile, took a sip of wine, and hoped the moment would fade. It didn't, not really. The chatter moved on, but I sat there, my face draining of color, the food tasting like dust. Lauren started gushing about redecorating the apartment, new paint, where the crib would go, ripping out my old-fashioned curtains. She laughed and tossed out, "Don't worry, we'll let you swing by. You can keep your plants on the balcony if you like." Michael jumped in, "We'll give you plenty of time to pack up, no hurry." They hadn't even asked me. They'd just decided, proclaimed to my friends that my home, where I'd lived with my late husband for 28 years, where I'd mourned, slept, and wrestled a busted pipe solo, was now their baby's nursery. I slipped out before dessert hit the table. Michael shot me a look like I was being dramatic, but I muttered something about not feeling great. Lauren offered to order me a rideshare, but I waved her off. I walked 4 blocks in heels I hadn't worn in ages, my toes blistering, my chest tight, but it was the only way to hush the chaos screaming in my head. When I got home, my apartment didn't feel right anymore, not safe, not mine. I locked the door, checked it twice, then once more. Their voices kept looping in my mind, Lauren's chuckle about my curtains, Michael's saying I didn't need the space. My husband's photos on the bookshelf stared at me, less like memories and more like cautions. I sank into a chair at the kitchen table, hands pressed hard against the wood, unable to budge for almost an hour and a half. When I finally moved, I pulled open a drawer I hadn't touched in months. Inside were my husband's old file folders, legal papers, wills, emergency contacts. I hadn't rifled through them since his funeral 3 years back. Then I found it, something I'd forgotten, a power of attorney form from 18 months ago, signed when I was in the hospital with bronchitis. Michael's name was scrawled on it. My stomach twisted. I fired off a text to my lawyer at 11 p.m., asking if it was still valid. Her reply pinged at dawn, "If you didn't cancel it, yes. We should talk." That's when it sank in. Michael wasn't asking for permission. He wasn't throwing out ideas. He was rolling out a plan. I didn't sleep that night. His face kept flashing in my mind, the way he clinked that glass, making his big announcement. The way he looked at me, not with warmth, not with hesitation, but with certainty, like I was a contract already signed. I curled up on the couch, my robe cinched tight around me, staring into space as Lauren's words looped in my head. "We're just so thankful you're on board." I never said I was on board, not with a single word or nod, but I didn't shut it down either. I let their little show play out. That was my screw-up, and now it was snowballing. When I grabbed my phone that morning, I saw Lauren had posted a slow, sappy video of my living room, soft piano music playing, with a caption, "Kicking off our family's next adventure, waving goodbye to Nana's place, welcoming our new home. My couch, my bookshelves, my window with those lace curtains I love." 42 comments gushed. How sweet of her to hand it over. She's gotta be so thrilled. I kept scrolling until my chest felt like it was caving in. Michael had already shot me an email with a transition plan, a checklist of stuff they wanted me to clear out by month's end, suggested move-out dates, and a link to a Pinterest board called Cozy Nursery Vibes. It showed my bedroom gutted, nothing but a crib and a rocking chair. I hadn't said a word about the dinner, hadn't agreed to anything, but they acted like I had. I dialed my lawyer before 8 a.m. Her voice turned sharp when I mentioned Michael's name on that power of attorney form. "You need to get in here today, Susan." I dressed like I was gearing up for a fight, crisp blouse, tailored slacks, shoes that clicked with every step. I hauled every folder, every deed, every scrap of paper with my name on it. She scanned the documents, her lips pressed thin. "You never canceled this, Susan. Legally, he could step in if someone says you're not fit to make decisions." "But I'm fine," I said, my voice steady. "Exactly. But if he got a doctor to scribble down something about memory lapses or confusion, even just on a form, he could drag you into court. It's not common, but it happens, especially when family property's at stake." My stomach dropped. She peered over her glasses. "We're revoking this today, and you need to watch every word you say or sign. Everything goes through me now. Got it?" I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. When I got home, my key jammed in the front gate for a split second that stopped my heart. I wiggled it, half panicked, until it clicked. Just stiff from the chilly weather, but for that moment, I swore they'd changed the locks. That night, I didn't bother cooking or tidying up. I sat at my kitchen table, pen in hand, and jotted down a list, every dime I'd shelled out for Michael since he grew up. The college tuition I paid when he lost his scholarship. His wedding, where I covered the venue and most of the food. That emergency loan for their so-called IVF treatments 15 months ago that never happened. They weren't even trying for a baby, they just dangled the word baby, knowing I'd melt. And now this. I wandered to my bedroom and yanked open the closet. Up on the top shelf were old photo albums. I tugged one down and flipped through, Michael in his little soccer jersey, Lauren flashing her flawless smile at their engagement party, me and my husband clinking glasses in this very apartment. I snapped the album shut. Then I sent Michael a short text. "We need to talk face to face, not through public stunts or Pinterest boards." No response for 5 hours. When he finally replied, it was just a thumbs up dot. That's when it hit me, I wasn't his mom anymore. I was a hurdle, a locked door, a signature on a deed he needed to erase. For days after that awful dinner, a manila envelope slid under my door while I was in the shower. No knock, just the soft scrape of paper on tile. I found it, still dripping in my towel, and tore it open, my pulse racing. It was a preliminary transfer agreement, residential property, with my name already filled in next to Michael's and Lauren's. My signature lines sat blank. Clipped to it was a note, typed too neatly in Michael's voice. "No pressure, just need this signed by Thursday for the bank to move forward. Thanks, Mom." Bank approvals. They weren't just dreaming, they were already using my home as collateral. I sank onto the edge of the tub, the paper damp in my shaky hands. I snapped a photo of the document and texted it to my lawyer. She called in under 10 minutes. He's acting like the place is already his, she said, her tone calm but firm. If you sign that, it's done. Don't even leave it lying around, shred it. He mailed it, I said, my voice shaky. Then he's building a paper trail to make it look like you're going along with it. Don't reply. Don't write anything back. That night, I dove back into my filing cabinet, determined to know every document tied to my name. I found a health directive from 18 months ago, signed during that bronchitis hospital stay. Tucked inside was a limited authority clause, naming Michael as my proxy for financial decisions if I was incapacitated. It came back to me then. He'd brought those papers to my hospital bed, and 4 in my arm, saying, "Just sign these for the insurance stuff, Mom." I was too tired to read them, so I scribbled my name to get him to leave. My lawyer confirmed that night, if they convinced one doctor to say I was slipping, they could challenge my control over my assets. It wouldn't be a slam dunk, but it could tie me up in court. And if I'd accidentally said something in a text or email that sounded like agreement, they could twist it to look like I'd given the green light. I kept replaying that dinner in my mind, Lauren's polished smile as she recorded, Michael's words already in past tense, "Mom's on board. She's giving it to us." It wasn't a slip-up. It was a carefully rehearsed act, a story they'd crafted behind my back. And I'd let it unfold without a fight. The next morning, I locked down everything. I froze my credit, secured my bank accounts, and yanked every shred of authority Michael had. I scrubbed him from my emergency contacts, changed every password on my financial apps, and started screenshotting every single interaction. I didn't answer his texts but kept them all saved. I rang up the building manager to find out who'd gotten through the security gate the night before. He hesitated, then said, "Michael used your spare key. Said he was checking on you." I hadn't asked him to come by. I wasn't hurt or in trouble. I didn't even know he still had a key. I told the manager I wanted the locks changed. He said I'd need to file a formal request. I filled out the paperwork that same day. That night, I gathered all my important papers, deeds, wills, everything, and locked them in a metal box I slid under my bed. I quit drinking wine with dinner and ditched my sleep aids. I needed my head clear, sharp as a tack. I started a journal, logging every interaction with Michael and Lauren, noting the time and date to prove I was in my right mind. One night, I even jotted down a fake grocery list and tucked it into the journal, just to show I was thinking straight. I wasn't losing it. I was being cornered. They weren't just hoping I'd hand over my home, they were building a case to snatch it. 3 days later, Lauren showed up at my door, all smiles like nothing was wrong, holding a gift bag and an iced coffee with my name scrawled wrong in marker. I cracked the door halfway, not letting her in. "Just wanted to pop by," she said, her voice dripping with sweetness. "Thought I'd check on you. Got your favorite, caramel latte, extra ice." She held out the drink. I didn't take it. "You didn't call or text first," I said, keeping my tone flat. She brushed it off with a laugh. "Figured a surprise would cheer you up. You've been so quiet lately." I stayed quiet, hoping she'd take the hint and leave. Instead, she pushed the gift bag toward me. "It's vitamins," she said, her eyes wide and bright. "Prenatals. We're trying. But you already knew that." I blinked, caught off guard. "You're pregnant?" She put a hand on her stomach, all dramatic, like she was already glowing just days after that dinner. "We weren't going to spill yet, but your gift of the apartment, it feels like fate, you know?" I knew she wasn't pregnant. It was clear as day. Her eyes were too sharp, too calculating. Later, when I finally stepped aside and let her in, she grabbed a sparkling water from my fridge without even glancing at the label. No one freshly pregnant would chug carbonation like that without a second thought. I didn't call her on it. I just watched. She strolled through my apartment like she already owned it, rattling off plans for where the crib would go, what walls she'd repaint, how she'd tear out the hall closet for more space. I stood in the corner of the living room, saying nothing, as she reimagined my home like some house flipper on TV. "This bookshelf," she said, running her hand along it. "We can donate it, can't we? It's a little dated." "That bookshelf. My husband built it with his own hands 29 years ago." I stayed quiet as Lauren poked around, opening drawers, glancing into the laundry room, and tossing out comments about my furniture. I trailed her to the hallway, where she gestured at my sewing room. "This would make a perfect nursery soon," she said, all casual. "You know, before those stairs get too tough for you. Babies need peace, not piles of stuff." Something inside me snapped, but I kept my cool. I looked her in the eye and asked, "Lauren, when did your doctor say you were pregnant?" She froze for a split second, then let out a nervous laugh. "It's super early, too soon for tests. I just feel it, you know. No ultrasound, no lab results, nothing. We're going to the doctor Monday," she fumbled, her words tripping over themselves. "You'll be the first we tell, obviously." That, obviously, hit me like a jab. I watched her drift back to the living room, scrolling her phone, her purse sitting open on the counter. I spotted a manila folder inside. When she slipped off to the bathroom, I took a quick look: copies of my apartment's floor plan, scribbled with furniture layouts, and a Zillow printout estimating its value. They were setting it up, maybe even planning to flip it. I snapped a picture, slid the folder back, and was seated by the time she returned. "Want to stay for dinner?" I asked, keeping my voice light. She looked thrown, then flashed a smile. "Yeah, that sounds nice. Should I get Michael over?" "Nah, just us girls," I said. I threw together some frozen lasagna and poured flat soda. Let her think I was at ease. She left at 7:30 p.m., still babbling about paint swatches and baby names, completely clueless. But I'd seen her folder. I locked the door and shoved my sewing machine in front of it. I wasn't afraid, I was prepared. I opened my phone, pulled up my screenshots, and made a folder labeled Evidence. This wasn't family anymore. This was a scam, and I had the receipts. The next morning, I was up before the sun, not packing bags but gathering facts. I called my old friend Eleanor, a retired real estate agent now living a couple of towns over, mostly tending her garden and ignoring her ex's messages. She didn't blink at my 6:15 a.m. call, just said, "Lay it on me." I spilled it all: the dinner, Lauren's fake pregnancy act, the documents in her purse, their made-up story about my consent. Eleanor listened, then cut in, "You need to get out before they realize you're wise to them." She offered to list my apartment through her network of private buyers. No public ads, just cash deals. "It'll sell for less," she warned, "but it'll keep them from sticking their noses in before it's done." I said yes right then and there. For the next 4 days, I played the part. I sent Michael short, cheery texts. I hearted Lauren's nursery posts on Instagram. I even posted a picture of my spaghetti dinner with a caption, "Home's where the heart is." I wanted them to think I was easygoing, pliable. All the while, I was lining up an inspection for a one-bedroom cottage Eleanor tracked down, 3 states away in a quiet little coastal village where nobody knew me or had any ties to Michael. The listing showed a dated bathroom and a rickety deck, but that didn't faze me. It was out of the way. It was mine. The seller, a widower scaling down, agreed to a cash deal if I didn't haggle. We shook on it the next day. While Michael probably pictured me glued to baking shows, I was wiring money and hiring movers for furniture I hadn't told a soul I was taking. I called Tom from church, a guy with a van and no nosy questions. In one afternoon, he loaded up my husband's old tools, my heirloom china, and the photo boxes from the attic. I told the building super I'd be traveling for a while and not to share any details with family unless I gave the okay. He raised an eyebrow but nodded. I swung by the leasing office and swapped my emergency contact to Eleanor. I set up a P.O. box in the new town and scheduled my mail to forward 3 weeks later so they wouldn't catch on. I told the electric company I was moving in with a relative for health reasons and picked a shut-off date. The clerk offered kind words, and I didn't bother correcting her. Every day, I kept my expression neutral, my voice soft and warm. I let Michael believe I was frail, let Lauren think I was touched by their gratitude. But behind the scenes, I was unraveling their scheme. On the 5th day, Lauren sent a video of herself lounging on my couch, gushing about filling this place with love again. The caption read, "Soon ours, but forever Nana's legacy." It racked up 1,800 views. I didn't shed a tear. I just screenshotted it and tucked it into my evidence folder. That evening, I left a small hint for them, an empty suitcase propped in the hallway where Lauren would spot it on her next uninvited visit. She'd assume I was packing for a vacation and tell Michael. They'd think they had plenty of time. They were wrong. I was gone in 6 days. By the time they figured it out, the keys would belong to someone else, and all I'd leave behind was a locked file cabinet and the lingering scent of rosemary baked into the curtains they'd never wash out. It went down on a Monday afternoon. I just wrapped up a call with the title company, confirming the apartment's sale would close in 48 hours, cash, no strings, exactly as Eleanor had set up. I hung up when a sharp knock hit the door, loud and insistent. I didn't budge. I stood in the hallway, holding my breath. The knock came again, then Michael's voice cut through, "Mom, open the door." I stayed put. I knew he had his key, or thought he did. I'd changed the locks 3 days earlier, without a word. I heard the key scrape, fumble, and fail. A heavier knock followed. "Mom, we need to talk." I didn't move. He kept at it. "You're ignoring my texts, and Lauren's freaking out." "What's going on?" I leaned against the wall, arms folded, silent. His tone sharpened. "We know about the realtor. Eleanor called someone we know. You're selling the apartment? Are you for real?" I didn't answer. "You're screwing over your own family. Do you even get that?" Still nothing. His voice dropped, like he sensed I was right there. "If you don't open this door and talk like a grown-up, I'll do what I have to, legally." He left, but not without slipping another envelope through the doorframe, just like before. Inside was a typed notice, signed by a legal assistant from some unfamiliar firm, request for transitional occupancy review, with a highlighted chunk about a pending potential medical guardianship claim. I set it on the kitchen table and called my lawyer. She picked up fast. I read her the highlighted part. She let out a heavy sigh. "They're stepping it up. They're going to try to question your mental capacity. This isn't just pressure, it's a calculated move." That night, I sat at the kitchen table, my lockbox open, sorting papers, copying files, and recording a video of myself reading a dated rundown of my financial choices, steady, no hesitation, then sent it to my lawyer's secure folder. I attached every bank transfer, screenshot, and text, narrating each one with exact dates and details, the sale contract, the cottage offer, the inspection report. It was exhausting, but it had to be bulletproof. I wasn't just guarding my money, I was proving I was sharp. Once someone calls you confused, they stop listening to what you know. The next morning started quietly, just the rustle of wind through the pine trees and the sound of a spoon clinking gently against my teacup. I was halfway through a book when I heard it, Lauren's voice. Shrill, insistent, echoing down my walkway like a siren. She hadn't knocked. She didn't need to. She wanted a scene. "We're trying to start a family, and you're being heartless." Her voice cut through the still air, deliberate and loud enough for every neighbor within earshot to hear. I imagined curtains twitching, doors cracking open just an inch. "You promised us a home," she shrieked. It was a performance, and like any decent performer, she brought props, her phone, held up just high enough for that blinking red light to catch everything. The tears were already flowing, big, dramatic sobs with just enough space between them to keep the makeup intact. I didn't rush to the door. I moved slowly, calmly, like someone handling a venomous snake. When I opened it, I let it swing just wide enough to show my face, let her look me dead in the eye. She stared at me, still crying. Still filming. I gave her nothing but one word, cold and sharp as glass. "Leave." And that was it. She posted the video later that night. Of course she did. She even edited it, soft fades between shots, washed out colors, mournful piano music trickling underneath like it was some indie documentary about loss and injustice. The title? When Family Betrays You, a Pregnancy Without a Home. The comments came fast and furious. Strangers who knew nothing about the truth lining up to toss their outrage into the void. How could a mom do this? Selfish boomer. No wonder her own son wants her gone. I didn't cry. I didn't even get angry. I took screenshots, every comment, every like, every manipulated frame, and emailed the whole thread to my lawyer under the subject line: defamation and harassment. The following morning, I got a text from Michael. First one in days. Sign the attached, and we'll drop this. No court. The attachment was a PDF deed transfer, already signed by him and Lauren. My signature line was blank. I didn't even open the file. Just forwarded it to my lawyer with a one-line note. This is their latest move. Then I sent Michael one final message. You'll be served papers within the week. Don't contact me again. No emojis. No anger. Just fact. I sat back afterward, phone face down on the table. Outside, the tide had started to come in, waves curling against the rocks like a steady drumbeat. I felt the tension leave my shoulders, not all of it, but enough. They wanted a war they could control, one they could edit and frame for sympathy. But I'd taken back the narrative. Not with drama. Not with tears. With documentation, boundaries, and silence. And silence, I was learning, was its own kind of power. By evening, I had my bags packed, keys in hand, and a note for the new buyers: this place is yours now, except for the quiet I'm taking with me. I left at 4:15 a.m., when the streets were dead, the only noise my suitcase wheels scraping the uneven pavement outside the apartment I'd called home for 31 years. I didn't glance back. Eleanor met me one town over, handing me coffee with a quiet, knowing smile. The cottage was a 3-hour drive, tucked along the coast, surrounded by pines and stillness. When I got there, I didn't unpack. I stood in the empty kitchen and let out a breath, like I'd been holding it for years. I didn't check my phone. I knew what was waiting. For days later, when I finally turned it on, there were 29 missed calls, 14 voicemails, and over 50 texts, mostly from Michael, some from Lauren, a few from unknown numbers. The group chats were uglier. Cousins, friends, even my sister had been pulled in. They shared screenshots of Lauren's video of me shutting the door. Michael sent a long message claiming I'd abandoned them during their pregnancy, stealing their home. The baby lie kept going, and worse, people bought it. I didn't fire back, not once. I could have. Lord knows I drafted a dozen replies, each one sharper than the last. But I held my tongue. Instead, I sat there with my phone in hand, reading every single message as it came in. Each word felt like a needle prick. These were people I had fed, comforted, laughed with. People I had cried beside at funerals, bought birthday cakes for, let crash on my couch during breakups and storms. And now they were lining up behind Michael, parroting his sanctimonious lines like some kind of script. I hope you reconsider. Family stays tight. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Michael wasn't just twisting our story, he was rewriting it. Casting himself as the broken-hearted son who tried everything to help his poor, unstable mother. Not a word about the gaslighting. Not a word about the lies. And certainly not a whisper of what he and Lauren had done to isolate me, to make me doubt my own mind. Then, in the middle of that emotional fog, a message pinged in from Rachel, my niece. She was never one to sugarcoat, and truth be told, she'd always kept Lauren at arm's length. Her text was short, no fluff. Aunt Susan, I'm not buying their act. You okay? Something in me unclenched. I typed back fast. Safe and finished. Just 3 words. But they carried every ounce of what I'd endured. She replied with a red heart, then followed with, "Holler if you need me in your corner." I didn't cry, not fully, but I sat there staring at that little red icon, feeling the warmth of something I thought I'd lost. Quiet loyalty. The kind that doesn't broadcast itself. The kind that just stays. The next morning, my phone buzzed again, this time with finality. It was my lawyer. Her voice was calm, professional, but I could hear the relief in it too. "It's done," she said. "Funds wired. Deed filed. The apartment is no longer yours, and never legally his." I let that sink in. It wasn't just a transaction, it was a severing. A clean break from the space they'd tried to claim, occupy, and dominate. I asked the question that had been hanging in the back of my mind for weeks. "And their guardianship threats?" She didn't even pause. "They won't file now. You've outmaneuvered them. Their little sob story on social media won't stand up against the timeline we documented. But you need to lock your will down, officially." I exhaled. Already done. 2 months ago. Every last detail had been accounted for. The cottage where I now lived, my savings, my modest life insurance policy, they were all placed into a community trust. A trust designed for older women who, like me, had been pushed aside and were clawing their way back to dignity. Michael and Lauren? Excluded. Legally, irreversibly cut off. They could post all they wanted, but they wouldn't see a cent. That night, I emailed the final signed copy of my will to my lawyer with a note. "Please confirm receipt. No revisions." Then I poured myself a glass of water, cool, clean, and stepped outside onto the porch. The sky had turned that soft pink you only get at the end of a long, clear day. The pines stood still. No wind. No voices. Just silence. But it wasn't the kind of silence that hurts. It was the kind that lets you breathe again. The kind that feels earned. I wasn't mourning anymore. I wasn't bracing for the next blow. I was free. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt safe inside my own skin. Right before I powered off my phone, it buzzed with a text from Michael. "Dad would be ashamed of you right now." I didn't bite back. I knew my husband would have said, "You should have moved quicker." Then came a package, no sender's name, no note, just a slim box left by my cottage door, wrapped in tissue and ribbon like some kind of peace offering. Inside was a framed sonogram and a card. "Can we start fresh? And." The image looked convincing, but I'd seen it before. Lauren's fake sonogram from a pregnancy app, posted months ago as a vision board. They'd printed it, mailed it, framed it like a prop. I left it on the counter, untouched. 3 days later, an email landed. Subject, dinner. The message read, "We'll be in the area this weekend. Can we sit down? No pressure, just family." I didn't reply. Saturday evening, headlights lit up the gravel path at 6:20 p.m. as the sun sank. From the kitchen window, I saw a black SUV pull in. Lauren stepped out in wedges, Michael in a jacket, clutching a bottle of wine. I didn't open the door. Their knock started soft, then turned sharp. "Mom," Michael called. "We just want to talk." We drove for hours. I stood inside, lights off, gripping the back of a chair, still as stone. Lauren's voice broke, all rehearsed. "You're turning your back on your grandchild. Is that really what you want?" I didn't make a sound. They lingered for 19 minutes, I clocked it. They left the wine on the step and drove off. The label said, "Redemption Merlot." I dumped it down the sink. That night, Michael texted, "You win. Hope it was worth losing your family." I screenshotted it, filed it in my evidence folder, and deleted his contact. The next morning, I sipped coffee with my neighbor, Margaret, who'd moved here after ditching her husband of 35 years and now ran a candle shop out of her shed. She laughed about the fake sonogram. "People go nuts over money," she said. "But you held your ground. That makes you dangerous to them." I nodded. Dangerous felt like the right word. That week, I bought a raised garden bed, planted sage and basil, and signed up for the local co-op. When my phone buzzed on Friday, it was an unknown number. I let it roll to voicemail, then played it. Lauren's voice: "Hi, Susan. I know things got ugly, but we're still hoping to keep a door open for the baby, for the future. Please call." I deleted it. The only door that mattered was the one they'd never step through again. It wasn't some big, dramatic showdown, no fancy office or shocked relatives, just a quiet coffee meeting at my lawyer's desk on a rainy Tuesday morning. The final signature sealed it. Michael and Lauren were cut out for good. No cracks, no do-overs, just a rock-solid document funneling every asset, from my cottage to my savings to the brass lamp on my table, into a community endowment in my husband's name, helping older women escape family financial or emotional abuse. My lawyer, Claire, handed me the hard copy, double-checking every page. "It's done," she said. "If they try to fight it, they'll crash and burn. Your paper trail is airtight." I took the folder, its weight like armor in my hands. 3 days later, Rachel called. "Michael knows," she said. "He's back to posting vague quotes. Betrayal comes from those you trust most." Lauren's Instagram bio now says, "Chosen family only." I let out a short, sharp laugh. "Let them post," I said. They lost any claim to my name when they tried to swipe it. A week later, an envelope arrived, no fanfare, just a crisp white letterhead with the seal of the charity board. I opened it with steady hands but found myself holding my breath anyway. Inside was the formal confirmation: the Quiet Exit Fund had officially launched. My first deposit had already been processed, and the funds were beginning to do their work, quietly, efficiently, for women who had no one else fighting in their corner. I read the letter once. Then again. And a third time, this time slower, like my eyes were trying to memorize every word. There was something profoundly grounding about seeing it in ink. Something that told me I hadn't just survived. I'd done something with the pain. I hadn't let it rot inside me. I folded the letter neatly, smoothed the creases, and slid it into the kitchen drawer next to my teacups, where I kept the little things worth keeping: grandmother's measuring spoons, a faded birthday card, a matchbox from my first solo vacation. Now, this letter belonged there too. That evening, as the light thinned into that soft watercolor wash that only comes near the sea, I opened a chilled bottle of sparkling water, the kind with a hint of lime, and took it out onto the back deck. The coastal breeze met me like an old friend, cool, salty, just strong enough to remind me the world was still moving. I sat down slowly, barefoot, pulling a blanket over my legs, and opened my phone. For reasons I can't explain, I pulled up the real estate listing for the apartment. The one I had let go of not in defeat, but with deliberate, clean purpose. And there it was, the new family. A photo of the living room lit with warm evening light, showing a small couch, scattered toys, and a pair of worn-in sneakers tucked under the coffee table. No nursery painted with false hope. No performative sob stories. Just a young couple, smiling, ordinary, at peace. But what caught me off guard was the bookshelf. In the background of one of the photos, tucked behind the armchair, was the tall wooden bookshelf my husband had built with his own hands, years ago, before Michael started rewriting our memories. It stood exactly where it always had, but now it held little potted succulents, a small ceramic bird, and a stack of children's books. Nothing fancy. But it hadn't been tossed or sold or replaced. They'd kept it. And for some reason, that hit me harder than anything else. They hadn't known the story behind that shelf, hadn't witnessed the slow erosion of trust in that space, but they honored it by simply letting it be. That was enough for me. Enough to know the space had been cleansed, repurposed, and filled with something gentler. Just then, my phone lit up with a message, an unfamiliar name but a familiar connection. Michael's old college buddy. "I saw what they pulled," he wrote. "You did the right thing cutting them off. Wish my mom had done the same before my brother drained her dry." I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. "Thanks," I typed. Just that. One word, but it held 1,000 unsaid things. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. I hadn't merely defended my home or my dignity, I had made something visible. I had put a name to the kind of betrayal that too many carry like a hidden bruise under their clothes. Quiet. Shameful. Unspoken. But no more. That night, I didn't feel lonely. I felt steady. The breeze picked up again, tugging gently at my sleeves. And under the silver sky, I whispered something only the ocean could hear. It's over. But it mattered. I was through staying silent. While they stewed in their made-up grudges, I'd flipped the script on the ending they thought they'd locked down. I didn't give them a battle. I gave them silence, stronger than their loudest tantrums. 7 months later, I stood barefoot on my cottage porch, cradling a mug of sage tea brewed from my own garden, watching gulls swoop over the ocean waves. I hadn't heard a peep from Michael or Lauren in 3 months, not since the final legal notice shut them out from contacting me about my estate. They didn't fight the will. They didn't try again. They knew I was gone, not just my address, but the version of me they'd twisted and used was erased for good. My days felt fresh, like a new chapter. Mornings were for tending my garden, afternoons for volunteering at the community center, and evenings for card games with Margaret, who teased I was a shark hiding behind my polite smile. I'd found real friends, folks who didn't pry about money or flash scheming grins. The cottage wasn't just a hideaway, it was where I came back to life. I cooked meals from scratch, laughed without holding back, and slept soundly without clutching my phone like a weapon. The day before my next birthday, Rachel mailed me a letter with a photo of her newborn son and a note: "If he grows up with even half your fire, I'll know I did something right." I stuck it on the fridge with a starfish magnet and let myself cry, soft, healing tears. That evening, I wrote a check to a shelter for older women breaking free from financial traps, sealing it with a note: "Put it to good use." She made it out. As the sun dipped low and the breeze sang through my driftwood wind chimes, my phone buzzed, an unknown number. I didn't bother looking. I turned it off and slid it into a drawer. I didn't need it anymore. This life, no spotlight, no stage, no one cheering for what they shattered, was mine alone. The cottage was still, and so was I. For the first time in years, that quiet wasn't hollow. It was peace, solid, unshakable, exactly what I chose. Exactly what they'd never touch again.